It's finally springtime, and that means three things. Number one, the birds are chirping. Number two, the Bradford pears are stinking. And number three, it's time to fire up your favorite cooker. Today we're gonna cook what I believe is the first thing a new backyard pitmaster should master. And I think you should learn to cook this first because it's nothing too complex. No rendering fat. The only thing that you're really doing is trying to get the meat to temp and burn a clean fire. We're gonna create a simple brine, we're gonna use a simple rub, and we're gonna cook it to perfection. So hang out with me for a while. My name's Ben. All my friends, and especially my kids, call me bruh, and welcome to What we're cooking today is a boneless pork loin, not to be confused with a tenderloin. Two totally different cuts. This is basically the whole pork chop section that's been deboned. This is 8.72 pounds, so 8 3/4 pounds, and it only cost me $20. This is one of the cheapest cuts of meat that you can buy. And no, I'm not gonna cook the whole thing today. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut it in half, save one half for later on, and cook one portion a day. So let's unpackage it and prepare it for how I wanna cook it. And like I said, I'm only gonna cook half of this today, so I'm gonna separate it directly in the middle. There we go, one half, one half. I think I'll cook this one. Into the freezer until next time. Now to prep this, I'm really only gonna do two things. One is I'm gonna remove all this excess fat because there's a layer of silver skin underneath that runs across the whole top. Now that all the silver skin's removed, I'm gonna take my trusty chopstick and I'm gonna create some holes to where the brine has easier access to penetrate the meat. Prepping the meat is done. Now for our brine today, we're gonna have three simple ingredients. The first one being kosher salt. Now this is Diamond Crystal kosher salt. The reason that it's not in a box is because I normally buy this in bulk on Amazon and I put it in this type of container, which is got this lid so it's airtight, and this container also has the ability to pour things pretty accurately so I don't make a mess on my counter. But again, the first ingredient is kosher salt. The second ingredient that we are going to use is going to be the Heath Riles garlic jalapeno rub. Now you can use whatever seasoning mix you want to for this brine, but this has garlic, jalapeno, salt, and sugar, all the good stuff. This video isn't sponsored by Heath or his team, but if you see this stuff, pick it up. The dude from North Mississippi knows what he's doing. And the last ingredient is going to be distilled water. Why distilled water? Well, distilled water is not going to come from your water treatment plant in your hometown that's going to have all the different chemicals added to it, which gives it its watery taste. This is clean and will give you a truer taste of the salt and seasoning in the meat that we're going to be cooking. Another reason I'm choosing to go with this is because it's a gallon and that's what our recipe calls for. And as I've already said, this is a pretty simple brine, so we're going to go with 3/4 of a cup of the kosher salt, and we're going with 1/4 cup of the seasoning blend. One cup. And as you do with all brines, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up a pot of boiling water to dissolve the salt. But also I want to teach you a term, and that term is decoct. And what that means by heating up something and extracting the essence of it. So we're doing two things by boiling this mixture. Number one, we're dissolving the salt. Number two, we're gonna release the essence of the pepper, the garlic, the sugar, and the other spices that are in the seasoning rub into the brine, so it's more flavorful. Will just adding the seasoning mix give you a good flavor? Sure, but a lot of the spices in this seasoning mix contain oil, and the only way that you're gonna get those out is by heating them up. It really brings out a lot of the flavors. Water in, salt and seasoning in, heat on. Once we've come to a boil, we're gonna kill the heat, set it to the side, bring in our container and add our water. Add in our seasoning mix. Place a top on it, set it in the fridge and allow it to completely cool. And with our brine completely chilled, we place the meat in the brine and we wait for 4 hours. To the fridge. Now that we've got a couple hours of free time on our hands, we need to determine what type of wood we're going to use for this cook. So to the wood rack. As I said in the introduction of the video, this is a simple cook to where we don't have to render any intermuscular fat. That's a low and slow process. For pork loin, we're going hot and fast. So now that I'm out here at my wood rack, I need to decide what type of wood I can use for a hot and fast process that's going to impart the most smoke flavor during the cook. Here I've got cherry, on the bottom I've got pecan, but for today's cook, we're going good old hickory. Let's add some heat. So now we're at the 4-hour mark. We've got our coals lit inside of the firebox, and we've got our splits on top of the firebox warming up to where if we put them on top of those coals, they light like that. Now I'm gonna get the loin, I'm gonna take it out of the brine, and we're gonna put our rub on it, get ready to cook. Pat the excess moisture off. The rub we're going to be using today is this Mississippi Grind by Swine Life Barbecue. It's made by another gentleman from North Mississippi by the name of Mark Williams. Mark, North Swine Life Barbecue are sponsoring this video, but this is my go-to stuff. It's a pretty sweet rub, but I love it. Kind of scrunch it up on this little wider end. Now I know I said this is a hot and fast cook, and normally you don't put a rub on a piece of meat that you're going to cook hot and fast. That is not what I meant to say. What I meant to say is that we don't put a whole lot of rub that has a high sugar content on our meat during a hot and fast cook, and I'll explain why here in a second. Of course we put barbecue rub on barbecue. What a moron. Why? Because the sugar starts to turn bitter once it starts to burn, totally ruining that bite of barbecue that you're cooking. But that doesn't normally happen until 350 degrees. We're going to run this cooker somewhere between 300 and 325 the entire cook. So hopefully, fingers crossed, the outside doesn't burn or become bitter. The first split's on, we're going to wait until we get above 300 degrees, put the meat on, and then try and maintain that 300 to 325 range. Check back in a second. So hopefully you can see it, but the needle straight up and down means that we're rocking right at around 300 degrees. If you look at the smokestack, you can see that there's no dark smoke coming out, so we know that we're burning a clean fire. I've already got my food probe set up in the loin to tell us the internal temperature of the meat. Let's put it on. So that's where we're cooking. I'm gonna leave it alone for the first hour. I'm gonna check the temp regularly, see what we come up with. Right now, we just hit the 1 hour mark on our cook. We're running between 300 and 325 degrees as planned, and we've got an internal temperature of 126 degrees. Let's see what we got. It's looking pretty nice. Nothing seems to be burning. Got a little bit of darkness to it. Shouldn't be too much longer. Pork.org, yes, that's a real website, says that pork is safe to eat at a temperature of 140 degrees internal temp. While that may be true, my family and I, we like to have ours a little bit more done. So we're gonna cook this to 150 to 155 degrees, pull it, allow it to rest for about 15-20 minutes, cut into it, and show you how we did today. We just hit 150 degrees internal temperature. Let's pull it out, see what we got. I'm really liking how that looks. Went ahead and took the food probe out so I can give it a good inspection. Nothing seems to be too dark. The edges aren't too dark. Nothing seems to be burned. We know it's to the internal temp that we desired. This looks really good. I'm gonna take some tin foil. I'm gonna tin it for about 10 minutes. Come back, slice it up, show you what we got. So let's recap what we did today. We brined a boneless pork loin for 4 hours using a brine of 3/4 of a cup of salt and then 1/4 cup of our favorite rub. Removed it out of the brine after that 4 hours, patted it dry, and applied our favorite barbecue rub. Cooked it between 300 and 325 degrees for exactly 2 hours. That was a cook time today. It's been resting under this aluminum foil for the past 10 minutes. Let's cut into it and see what we got. Everything's nice and pretty. Pulls apart easily. Still juicy. That's some pretty good pork loin. It's not overpowered by the brine. That's really good. I appreciate you hanging out with me today and let me show you how I like to cook boneless pork loin. If you like what I'm doing on the channel, don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and the bell notification to where you don't miss any new content that I'm going to be putting out. And until next time, this is your barbecue brother, signing out. Later.